when we are channeling loved ones that are in heaven, they are going to come through with a lot more love than what we're going to remember here on this earth.
Hey everybody, welcome to RealLaurenLive, the spirituality and health podcast. I have Travis Hill with me. How are you doing, Travis?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
So this is your third time on the show, I think, right?
It is.
Third time's the charm.
Third time, and it's been a little while.
Yes. So Travis is a friend of mine, and he's also a psychic medium and a wonderful person. He has a heart of gold, and we've gotten to know each other over the years. I met him through my husband, who had some readings. I had some readings with you, and then we decided to have you on the podcast a couple times, and we stayed in touch, and here you are again. So I encourage people to scroll down into my videos, or if you listen to Apple Podcasts too, scroll down the episodes and look for the other Travis Hill episodes so you can kind of get more of a background. But just a quick blurb, you can share who you are in case this is someone's first time.
Absolutely.
If you could just kind of explain like what you do and how you've been called, to this niche,
Definitely.
if you will.
Absolutely. So I practice mediumship. So I'm a medium. My main focus as a medium is as I started growing this practice, I guess you would say. Obviously, all mediums are capable of connecting to loved ones that are crossed over, to heaven. And so as I was navigating through this journey, I also learned that not only is my main focus providing people with closure with their relatives that have crossed over to heaven, but to actually channel people's soul, which is just basically like their higher self. And every reading that I do is so different. I like to go into every reading just 100% completely blind. Like most people will come in and they'll have kind of like thoughts in their mind, like the agenda, that they have for that day. But what's really cool with working in the higher self is that the higher self will actually direct me into like, are we going to provide this person closure? Are we going to work through grief? If there's some challenges in people's lives, like do they need guidance on their life path and their purpose? And so pretty much that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's fascinating. And like I said, I've had several readings with Travis. My husband has, my mom has, which my mom says hello.
Tell her I say hi. Your mom's a sweet person.
So Travis has connected with my, past loved ones, and I've been able to verify, like he's said things that I'm like, no one would know, and I'd never told him. It's fascinating. Like, I think you were like, I see this older woman in a garden. And I'm like, yep, that was my great grandma. She had a garden. Like, it's just crazy. So he can connect to the other side, and it's really cool. It's really healing. And you also can connect to people's higher self. And so you've been able to help me through some things. I remember our first reading years ago, you told me I was going to be on YouTube, and I thought that was super weird. This is before I started the podcast. And I was like, I don't think so. That's weird. Like, I don't want to be on YouTube. And then years later, look, I have a YouTube show. So it's like sometimes things will come through that don't make sense, but it's for a later time.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of people, will say, where it's like they'll have a reading with me. Like I said, I like to go into every reading blind and, really just go with the flow. I think the most important thing as a medium that I've learned is for me as the medium to get out of my own way. I think all of us humans have a tendency to want to control situations or outcomes. So when I connect to people's loved ones or higher self, I never know what we're going to be talking about. And most people will say that there's certain things that come through that they don't understand, that doesn't really make any sense. And then all of a sudden, maybe months or years down the road, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, like everything that you had said is starting to come, come into fruition,
It's really cool.
So it's really amazing. I love doing what I do. I kind of wanted to tell a little bit, about the audience, like as far as like, mediumship and, how it works. When I first started getting into this, because my ability does run on my dad's side of the family. So when I first got into this, it was when I was about 8 years old. And I actually had a near death experience. I was climbing a tree and then I fell. And it was kind of more of an outside body experience
Mm-hmm.
because I was like floating above my body. There was two lights in the sky. The sun was out that day, but on the opposite side of the sky, I was seeing a white light. I didn't see any spirits. I just saw my body laying there. It was like my spirit was floating above my body. But immediately I started seeing spirits after this incident. And I would actually see them physically with my actual eyes. And I would always have night terrors. So I would always like scream like someone's in my room, you know.
Wow.
And of course my parents are like rushing in and they're like, what's going on, you know? So over the years, I started connecting to paranormal groups, you know, in Salt Lake City. There was one specific kind of experience that I had when I learned I can actually talk to spirit and have a full-on conversation. In Utah, there's a city called Magna, and there was an old theater. And us paranormal investigators, we were just on this stage, and we had our EVPs next to us, and we heard tapping on the stage, and we were starting to look at each other like, "Are you doing that?" No one claimed that they were doing it. So I automatically started hearing in my mind the name Jenny. And then I had my eyes closed, so I started seeing tap dancing shoes. And so I was like, oh, there's a tap dancer by the name of Jenny. What was wild was I wanted to confirm this, and I knew my EVP was on. So I asked the spirit, is your name Jenny? And of course, as the medium, I'm hearing her say yes. What was really cool was after we did this paranormal investigation, I went back to the EVP, and you literally hear like a very clear whisper saying, "I'm Jenny."
Wow.
And that was when I was like, okay, I can actually not only see spirit, but I can actually talk to them. So that's when I started developing, you know, the idea of like doing readings for people. And it was roughly around 18 when I started practicing. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to be on the TV show called Psychic Kids. You know, that I think it aired in 2009. And so I had mentors as far as like other psychics and mediums, and they were really just trying to help me not to be scared of it. They were trying to help my confidence level, which actually really did work because after the TV show, I was like, I know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I
Yeah.
was like, this is it. I've actually been practicing professionally for about 10 years now. I say I've been doing readings for 13 because there was a time where I was just, you know, practicing with friends and
Sure.
family. But where I'm at now is so different compared to where I was at when I first began. I think I was a little bit more scared. So even though the TV show helped me build up my confidence, right now, I've learned, well, if I do a reading, I need to meditate before every reading. So when I connect to a client, I ask them, I was like, you know, I'll just give myself about maybe a minute to 2 minutes, and I'm just meditating. In my mind, I'm actually saying positive affirmations, such as I only allow, you know, the highest of good for this in particular
Yeah.
person that I'm reading to come through, and the information that they need to hear that is you know, that applies to them. And I'm also asking the loved ones that are up in heaven to step in, you know, the session. And I only ask for those that are in heaven to come through. Because as a medium, I mean, we've all learned that there's good spirits and
Yeah.
there's bad spirits. And so as a medium, I think it's everyone's like learning lesson to know the
Totally.
difference between good or bad. Um,
Yes.
and so once I start channeling someone's loved one, it's like I have my eyes closed. So I start to envision like their hair, sometimes their clothing. In readings, sometimes I can kind of see, like, say, for an example, if they had a mole on their face, I can kind of see, you know, what that mole is and where it's located. And then I start to kind of get a feeling, is this mom? Is this dad? Like, who is this? And usually it's a feeling that I get from within. But what I love is that their personality traits come through, you know. And I always have to let people know, I have to do both. When we are channeling loved ones that are in heaven, they are going to come through with a lot more love than what we're going to remember here on this earth. There's a lot more compassion, a lot more of that sentimental kind of energy and that feeling. And so I have to let people know, I'm going to validate how they once used to be. So, like, say, for an example, if someone was grumpy, they're going to come through at the beginning presenting that grumpy energy to me. And I have to relay that to the client. I have to say, okay, this person is folding their arms. They kind of feel grumpy or closed off or serious. But then the energy shifts. And what's really cool about the closure that people can receive is the ability for that person to understand why that person was the way that they're at. You know, why were they grumpy? And it helps us to like not take things personal as well. And so not only are they talking to their loved ones and really working through the grief, you know, if there's guilt there, we work through it, or resentment. But they're also they're actually being displayed a different level of a higher love that we just don't get to see here on planet Earth. And loved ones are willing to take accountability, and sometimes items for validation will come through. So as a medium, there's a lot going on, you know, when I'm in a connection. And so I can't remember our readings, but I do remember that reading that I have given you about YouTube, where I was like, I did see you on YouTube. And then here you are, look what you're doing. And it's amazing, you know. And I kind of wanted to share to people too about the higher self, because sometimes people get kind of confused. I like to look at our higher self as like our soul. Higher selves kind of describe it like us humans. Like, obviously we look, you know, we're physical beings. So if we kind of unzip this costume, they always kind of look at it as like a costume. So if we were to kind of unzip, all that we're left with is pure light. You know, we don't have a gender. We don't have the physical appearance that we see, you know, in a mirror every day. We're just pure light. So that's actually our soul. And what's really cool about our soul is that our soul was created at the beginning of time of the universe. So there could have been past lives that people have lived, you know. And when you're connecting to someone's higher self, you're connecting to every part of them, everything that they've learned in every life. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to incorporate that in this lifetime, you know. So like, say for an example, if somebody in a past life was a great singer, maybe they didn't do it professionally, but they had amazing vocal cords that they utilized. And maybe in this lifetime, they're trying to re-tap into that. If somebody is capable of meditating and connecting to their higher self and incorporating that skill and talent, they could actually become one and merge one with their highest of self. And so we really are more than what we see, you know. As a medium, you get to see all of that. You get to see what people go through, hard times to good times. And it's just like a really amazing experience.
Oh my gosh, I know. I mean, talking about it's just so cool, but for you to experience it's fascinating. Okay, I have a couple of questions. So when you had your near-death, because you know what's interesting, I've had a lot of near-death experience stories on this podcast. I've been hearing a lot about them more recently too. And it seems like most of them, once that happened, there was like a switch. Then they started getting the clairvoyant, psychic stuff coming through. It's interesting that had to happen to them in order for that to come through.
Isn't that wild?
That's interesting.
It's weird. It is weird. How I kind of look at it for me personally is that when I mentioned earlier that it runs on my dad's side of the family, my dad told me years ago my great grandmother would actually do readings. Apparently, she would do astrology, or I think he also said tea leaf readings, if I'm thinking correctly. I never knew who she was. And but when he told me this, I was like, "What?" I was like, "Really?"
That's cool.
And so even though I knew it ran on my dad's side of the family, what's wild was that the day that I had the near-death experience, it honestly was the on switch. Now, what
Mm-hmm.
was weird with that experience, though, is as I got older, there was some aunts and uncles and my grandparents that would actually say, "Well, before you fell, Travis, you would actually talk about how you would see people."
So you
And
already kind of had it.
I already kind of had it,
Yep.
yeah. I don't remember any of
Mm-hmm.
these memories. Obviously, they're stored somewhere in my
Yeah.
brain, but I haven't accessed them.
Wow.
And so people were always reminding me, like, it may have increased your ability
Mm-hmm.
to connect to spirit
Yeah.
after that fall, but it was already there.
Sure.
So I almost kind of look at it as people who have near-death experiences. Everybody's story might be a little bit different than others, of course, but I almost kind of look at it as like an honest, like on switch,
Mm-hmm.
or it intensifies. It's almost like if you have you ever talked to people that do like ayahuasca or like shamans that work
Yeah.
with stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've personally never done ayahuasca. I've been curious about it, but I
Yeah.
will be honest, I have a slight fear.
Yeah. I do too,
You
actually, because I'm like scared I'm going to feel out
know,
of control.
absolutely,
Yeah.
that's
I have no
exactly my
problem with
fear.
using it. It's more that I don't want to feel sick or out of control. Yeah.
That's it. Mine's exactly the same fear.
Mm-hmm.
I already have a fear of like, well, if I'm not in control,
Right.
then what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and but so far, what I've heard about people's situations in ayahuasca, is that they get to tap into like the DMT, which is considered the spirit molecule,
Mm-hmm.
and they're tapping into the spirit realm. And once they experience the spirit realm, it's almost like, I want to say, metaphorically speaking, it's like a seed that gets created within your energy field. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a portal, I guess you would say. So once you have an experience with the spirit realm, it's forever with you. It's like
Yeah.
for that person, the veil is so thin. That they can, come in and out of the
Yeah.
spirit realm. And that's what I've noticed with me as a medium, because a lot of people ask me questions like, does it ever drive you nuts, that
If
I'm
you
at
have to
the
like turn
grocery
it
store?
off, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I'm blessed enough to learn through mentors. That it's not good to always keep it on,
Sure.
you know. And so I do turn off. I do have, like, mentally, I have an off
Yeah.
switch, you know.
So when you're in
I
around a lot of people though in public, like do you sometimes kind of turn it off?
I have to. I
It's
have
too
to. Yeah.
overwhelming otherwise, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
So how do you
Absolutely.
do that?
I think it's kind of more of a mental perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely being in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And because one thing I realized, that by being in the present moment, I'm in this reality only.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can, my senses physically can heighten. So like I could be at a grocery store and smell things better.
Yeah.
I'm hearing the music that they're playing on the
So you're
radio,
trying to
and
just
I'm
really be present and not let
just really
yourself like,
focused.
or if you start having something come through, you're kind of like, nope, like I'm just going to kind of, yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
right, absolutely.
yeah.
And then I've also learned like boundaries, like with
Mm-hmm.
spirit too. Like say for an example, I think it was this morning. The last 2 days I've been feeling weird energy in my home, and even though I'm a medium, it's like when something's in my home and I know it's not a loved one and it's like this weird stranger, it's uneasy. You just don't, you want your home to be a sacred space, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it was this morning, I was like, I've been feeling something here.
Mm.
So I just closed my eyes and I was like, if there's any spirits that are not of the light, of
Mm-hmm.
the purest of white light, I command you to go away, please.
Mm.
And immediately I felt the energy of the room
Yeah.
shift. And so it's one of those things where, as a medium, you'll sense,
Mm-hmm.
spirit in places that you don't want to sense it,
Sure.
and then you just have to learn
To kind of,
boundaries.
yeah. And then, so what is, I mean, like, what do you think I know there's like good and bad energies. What do you think, like, the
Right.
intent of the kind of that bad energy? Like, what are they doing coming around there?
Right. Absolutely. So I would love to kind of go into that because this is actually a common question that a lot of people that I read have.
Yeah.
I like to kind of separate terminology from like negative spirits
Sure.
from like evil spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of talk about both. Negative spirits to me are, I'll kind of go into it because it's a little bit in depth. So I do believe that there are earthbound spirits. So that's why you get hauntings,
Like ghosts
in
or
different
something.
places. Absolutely. But a lot of people have that question of like, well, if because we hear both sides. In
Yeah.
religion they say, you can, if you obey, if you kind of do what you're told, then you're allowed to go to heaven. And if you
Mm-hmm.
sin, there's a potential chance that you'll go to hell.
Right.
So I don't believe in hell. I actually believe in hell as a state of mind, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like even us humans, like people who struggle with severe depression, or suicide, for an example, it's like to them, they're in that
Sure.
dark place. So I've learned through connecting to loved ones that have crossed over, as well as the higher selves, that every single human is allowed to go to heaven.
Mm.
However, the question would be, well, then how is their earthbound spirits? How
Mm.
do they exist?
Right.
So I've actually have learned through the higher self, earthbound spirits get created for various reasons. I'm going to use an example. Let's just say if there was a spirit that came from a very highly religious family, and maybe they were struggling with addiction. Maybe they got told by their family that they're not going to go to heaven because of the bad habit that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, nobody wants to be judged. Like, I think all of us humans get so scared of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I know I do for sure. So, of course, when we think of heaven, we automatically kind of think, well, am I going to be judged to get there?
Yeah.
So the light is always offering that spirit the opportunity for them to cross over. But because they are scared of crossing over, they just choose not to.
Mm.
And they kind of stay put. There's also the aspects of residual energy. So residual energy is actually, this is kind of sounds confusing, so I'll try my best to,
Sure. It's yeah.
incorporate this topic for you and the audience to understand. But I've learned that every event is imprinted into space and time,
Mm.
from good events to bad
Is that
events.
the Akashic records?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
love that you use
Hey,
that
man.
term.
Well, I went through
Yes.
my awakening information, which I'm still kind of in. Like, I went crazy down the rabbit holes, and so my husband, if anyone knows the Great Awakening map, check that out because that was our awakening red pill. Oh my God,
I love that map.
man, you
Yeah,
could study that for a lifetime. There's so
oh,
much on there.
there's so much
The
stuff.
Great
Yeah,
Pyramids and like just literally everything
everything.
from Earth up to space
Absolutely.
to God to heaven. But the Akashic records are on there, and so like I didn't know what that was, and so I Googled it. And been reading about it
Exactly.
spiritually, and so that's how I knew. It's really cool.
Exactly.
Basically, it's the for people that don't know, it's literally every thought, every word, every action, anything and everything that's ever happened in time is
Exactly.
it's almost like a encoded, like right, like it's like coded forever in
Yes,
existence. So you and I's
exactly.
conversation right now, right here at 4:18 p.m. This is forever, like right? Like it's
Oh,
part of,
totally. It's
yeah,
imprinted into
that's so
time.
cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like what's cool about time is that it constantly can replay over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I like to look at time as our thoughts,
Yeah.
So, all of us
Sorry,
have
one
good
second.
thoughts,
You
we
can
have
keep
bad
talking.
thoughts.
I'm just
Oh, no,
turning up. I'm turning up
you're
my.
totally fine.
Sorry.
And
Uh,
you're okay.
okay.
But
Sorry, people. We're live, so it's you never know what's going to happen. I was telling Travis before we started, I'm in my little studio shed, but we're getting freezing weather right now. It's literally like 20 something degrees out.
Oh my
And so we
goodness,
don't have
yeah.
heat in the shed. And so I have my little space heater. So I'm hoping people don't hear that. But that's why I'm literally wearing like a down vest right now because it's so cold. So we're matching in our vests today.
Yeah, no worries. And it's been so cold here
I
too.
know.
Like,
Gosh.
I know this is totally off topic, but we had like this amazing snowstorm, a
Gosh.
couple
It's
days
winter.
ago
It's
here in
been
Salt Lake
cold.
City. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was big. It was a
Yeah.
blizzard. I was like, I haven't seen this since I was a kid.
Dang. Yeah.
You know,
Anywho, sorry
and
everybody, but we're live and casual here. So let's just
right,
turn up my space
exactly.
heater. Um,
Well, that's what
okay.
I love about live.
Yeah, you
I
never
mean,
know.
it's you never know.
And we could cut it out,
It's
but I think it's
unscripted.
fun sometimes to keep it because you never know if a dog's going to bark or it's part of the energy. But yeah, okay. So the
Exactly.
Akashic records, and so I'm
Right.
sorry I interrupted you. What were you kind of saying
No,
with that?
oh, you're totally fine. Yeah. So yeah, the Akashic records, like everything is imprinted into time. And so,
Mm-hmm.
paranormal investigators are very aware of, what would be called residual energy,
Yeah.
which is just the idea that, a person, situation is still imprinted into that building, that land.
Sure. House.
So yeah, so it can
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel like a place is actually haunted with
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, and it kind of is, but it's being repeated over and over and over again. And
Is it like
so,
that they're trapped here? Because I've kind of heard that from ghosts. Sometimes if there's been something traumatic or something they're holding on to, like an attachment here, like it's harder for them to leave this realm.
correct,
Yeah.
right, absolutely. And sometimes it could be various of reasons. Like I've learned through the higher self that again that all of us are capable of crossing over to heaven. And however, say for an example, if they kind of felt like they wanted to kind of how do I put this in words? If they were kind of in a place of their life where they just feel guilty about
Yeah.
something and they're trying to make something right, then as this consciousness spirit, they will feel like, well, I need to try to make this right,
Mm.
and so they will try to change things. I think what spirits sometimes don't always understand up until we do cross over, because once we cross over to heaven, we have more knowledge and information that we didn't hear.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes when spirits feel stuck, they don't realize that once they cross over that they can actually talk to humans a lot better,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot more of a higher frequency, because I kind of look at stuck spirits still holding on to negative
It's a
emotions. So that's
lower
right.
frequency. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I use negative spirits, because to me, it's like, well, they could be holding on to anger.
Sure.
Maybe they're angry at something or they want justice. But what they don't realize is that if they were to cross over, that they would free themselves
Yeah.
from feeling like they need to change whatever it is they want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also heard that there are, evil spirits. Now, evil spirits are a little bit different. This is where it can kind of get a little bit kind of right down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But evil spirits, I mean, they do exist. The reason why I say they're rare is that I think most of us humans, when we cross over, we all want love. Like we could be, not the most, pleasant person on this planet, but we still want love,
Sure.
And so it's a little bit rare for people to say, oh, I choose evilness. The way I look at evil is actually the ego.
Mm.
So everyone has their own controversy topic on,
Mm-hmm.
what is the ego? Some people will say it's your identity
Mm-hmm.
of self. Some spiritualists will say, you hear a lot of shamans say, the ego death or the shadow work,
Mm-hmm.
So basically what happens is that if a human crossed over, like if a human, died, and they are holding on to the ego, which would just mean that they're holding on to the anger or the justice or the jealousy, whatever it is. And they're choosing not to free themselves from that, not to enter into a place of unconditional love. Then that rage can actually become sinister, because they're wanting revenge. They're
Yeah.
wanting to mess with people,
Mm.
and so I almost kind of feel like negative spirits are actually created by ego, because all that ego for me in my readings, I've looked at it as we all struggle with ego as a human. And basically, all that ego is fear.
Yeah.
But one thing that I found odd is that all of us want love, but we are so scared of love because we think that if we allow someone in, that they're going to tear us apart. That,
Mm-hmm.
the older generation, years and years ago, even centuries ago, once believed that watch out for the kind people, kind of concept,
Yeah.
and it was kind of like, don't trust people who are kind,
Yeah.
well, that would be the ego of not trusting people. So it's always on defense. I always
Mm.
kind of look at the ego as like a very overly protective parent figure of your
Mm-hmm.
life. And it's always saying how everyone is in the wrong. And you got to watch out, you got to be careful. So you start secluding yourself and you're no longer love yourself, you don't love other people. So if you're in that vibration, whether if you're a spirit or a human, then of course you're going to only hold on to the anger,
Yeah.
the justice,
That
the
makes
judgment.
sense.
Absolutely. So
So
it's
like why
wild.
are they like why would they come into your home? Is it because they know that you can pick up on stuff and they're trying to kind of like maybe suck some of that
Absolutely.
energy or whatever?
Absolutely. I haven't really focused too much on like the spirits that I was feeling a couple days ago in
Yeah.
my home. I haven't focused too much on, why they're there. Because sometimes if there's a unwanted spirit, I choose not to develop a
You
relationship
don't
with it.
wanna, yeah.
I don't want that cord. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I were to use my intuition, one of the things that I've learned for all of us humans, because we don't have to be a psychic or medium to actually go through this, and this will kind of lead into naturally something that maybe my heart is kind of wanting to talk
Yeah.
about to kind of help people in the audience,
Mm-hmm.
is that um, most people who climb the ladder of life will struggle climbing. And
Mm-hmm.
it always kind of feels like someone or something, including our own self, is bringing us right back down,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so a lot of celebrities will talk about this where they're reaching a point of their career where it's all of a sudden they're starting to notice friends or family are jealous of them. And so I've learned that this kind of goes back down to some of the other videos that you and I did of talking about the universal consciousness of fear and
Mm-hmm.
ego. If we look at in a perspective, if we look at our world, if we look at government for an example, religion for an example, and there's some really good religions out there, so I don't want to claim that every religion is bad because
Yeah.
it's not. But more organized religion that is overly strict, I guess you would say, all of it is run through the idea of control, the
Mm-hmm.
fear of actually us humans evolving. If we were to evolve, I mean, our technology, like we would be sustainable, solar
Yep.
panels,
Free
sustainable.
energy.
Yeah, free energy,
Which is
absolutely.
kind of
And
coming in now, sort of, but yeah.
sort of, yeah,
Yeah.
there's like a battle on that
Yeah,
politically,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's like there's controversial topics about it, like California for an example, like all of them, not every person with electric cars, but there was an
Right.
issue with the energy crisis, once that
Mm-hmm.
happened. But then a lot of I love documentaries, so there will be some documentaries that I watch where some environmentalists or scientists will say, well, there is technology where we can actually have sustainable energy
Yeah.
and it's not limited.
Totally.
We gotta use the technology that we
Mm-hmm.
know. So then we question, why is everything bringing us back down to
Mm-hmm.
evolution? And a lot of it is control. And so if I kind of look at it as me personally, when I was feeling these spirits, in my home, this morning and then the other day, I feel like because I was capable of doing a lot of healing on myself. I had a lot of trauma coming up, in the last 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, a lot of trauma coming up that I needed to heal, that I
Mm-hmm.
needed to resolve. Well, if anybody is capable of letting things go and forgiving people, even if you're not talking to them because you need boundaries, you still love them and you want the best for them, but yet at the same time, negative energy in the cosmos don't want that because they want you to be suppressed,
Yeah.
because part of love is evolution. Part of the evolution for us humans is to finally get to a place of unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
where there is world peace. So I've noticed with spiritual practitioners, they will commonly say, I feel like there's negative spirits that when I heal, that they will try to tear me back down
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Yep.
And so for me, I kind of personally felt what was in my house was just like these spirits that are like, no, we want you to stay in a place of
Yeah.
ego and judgment.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, I don't want
No,
to be there.
sorry. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I have another medium that I go to, and she's told me many
Right.
stories that where they've come and tried to actually like physically. I mean, this sounds weird to some people, but like come and like strangle her and like crazy stuff. She's
Got it. I think
very
you told me
spiritually
that.
evolved,
Yeah,
but she can ward them off and same thing. She can kind of protect herself in a light and say, you're not welcome here. And so
exactly.
sometimes people that have that spiritual openness, they can creep in, but that's why it's always really important for yourself to, even like me, I don't have abilities like you, but I do have some things I think a little bit that kind of come through, nothing like yours, but we all do have it, right? Our intuition
Oh,
centers. And
we
so
we
I've
definitely
learned
all
to
have it.
ground, clear first, then protect, because, sometimes, I don't know, this is really weird. I've been having faces come through to me, like right when I'm almost about to fall
Okay,
asleep, when I'm really relaxed at night. And my mom said she's having this too, which is interesting. I can just
very
start seeing
interesting.
really detailed images of faces, just literally like so specific, like
Okay,
reddish hair with freckles or like a really big nose, like very detailed faces of people that I don't know. And
right.
sometimes they start to look a little creepy, not like terror, like, oh my God, but just like, this is kind of
Mhm.
feeling a little weird. And so I'll kind of say, if anything's not in the best intent in this right now, like I'm just asking you to go away. I don't mind seeing the faces, but if it starts feeling weird, like I don't really want that coming in. So
Yes,
we can all do that. So it's really
yes,
interesting.
we
Once
can.
you're open, I think stuff
Oh,
good and bad can start coming through.
100%.
So it's
Yeah.
good to have those tools.
It's very good to have those tools.
Yeah.
I was doing a reading, was it yesterday, the other day? I can't remember, but it was either yesterday or the other day. And I was helping somebody that was awakening to their
Mm.
gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And their higher self had mentioned that when you're connecting to energy, you have to be in the right frequency to connect
Mm-hmm.
into that energy. So all of us have a choice through frequency of choosing darker things that we connect to.
Mm-hmm.
And we can vibe with that. Usually, darker things have a lower vibration to it.
Mm-hmm.
The way I like to look at it is all of us know that there's AM stations, there's
Yeah.
FM, and then you have XM radio.
Yeah.
High definition. Spotify.
Yeah.
And so if we listen to an AM station, it's staticky. It kind of feels annoying. We feel a little bit irritable. It's like we
Yeah.
try to listen to our favorite song, but it's not as enjoyable. FM is a little bit better. Definitely, XM and, HD is like, oh, I can feel the music,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a higher frequency. So I kind of look at energy as the same way as music.
Yeah.
And so when we're opening our third eye, when you were telling me that story with the faces that you're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a story that I had when I was a teenager here in a moment. But my intuition kept on feeling like your third eye is awakening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot
And
of ours is. I mean, I think what
yes,
I've noticed from
yes,
this podcast
it's
is just so many
opening.
people that are like getting stuff coming through, like it's happening.
Oh, it's big. I mean, I think it's obvious more than ever before that there is a planetary shift.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I think to myself years and years and years ago, probably even long before I met you, where all this information would come through from spirit to a
Mm-hmm.
client saying, we're going through a spiritual shift,
Yeah.
a planetary shift. And when I was channeling this information, like I believed it, but of course I wasn't really quite seeing it at the time. Like I would see it a little bit here and there with certain things and politics and, religion, especially like the LGBTQ community. Like I would see that shift. And then all of a sudden, it had nothing to do with COVID, but it was roughly around exactly the same time of COVID, where all of a sudden it was like, bam, it was like, no, this shift is happening and we can't stop
Yeah.
it.
Well, and I think that's what you were saying earlier, just like, and I talk about this all the time on this show, which part of my mission, I think, is just helping people with the awakening too. Like a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, even though it can seem grim, COVID and war, like, I mean, it's not war, but stuff in Ukraine and like the vaccine debate, like anything that's stirred up anything, any movements, whatever your beliefs are, stuff with our currency and political stuff, it's all stirring the pot and it's helping us realize, like, these systems that aren't really working anymore. We're shifting, we're changing, we're opening our mind. There's silver linings in all of this. It's a chance to evolve. And so it's really fascinating. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, but
absolutely,
you're right. And I'm feeling it, you're feeling it, other people are feeling it. Even if you don't have the things coming through, I think just people are being more open to even just talking about it and listening to podcasts like this or shows about intuition and just, holistic medicine and healing and just different crazy things. Like I was going to say really quick too, because I always like think of something. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Oh, the idea of like, I'm going back for a second. The idea of like a haunted house. Everyone's heard that and kind of believes in that. I stayed at this hotel and it was haunted. That stuff that's like, it's actually really real. Like, I mean, not a made up haunted house where you buy tickets necessarily, but places that have been deemed as haunted and you go and you feel that, and you actually truly feel it yourself. That's really, truly energy is coming through and maybe other spirits. And so this is things where people can maybe more relate to, like, oh, this isn't just made up woo-woo like crap. This is real. And like, there probably are spirits and ghosts that haven't passed on. This is something that's real. So I don't know. Just
100%.
An example of that maybe helps people realize like this stuff is around. And if you have the ability or the curiosity to want to tap in, you can.
100%. And I kind of feel like all of us naturally, I mean, I believe in evolution, of course, on a spiritual level and on a physical level too. I mean, I remember when I was in middle school and we were we were in biology and we were talking about evolution. I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's kind of cool, but then once I started doing readings, I was like, oh no, actually evolution does exist. Like it's obvious, like if we
but
look
maybe not the way
back,
we learned it exactly though, right?
It might not be exactly the way we learned it. I agree with you 100%. And just like history, it's like, what really did go on during those events, compared to what we've been taught went on, but I think that kind of proves my point there too, is even on the history topic and education, more than ever, I'm just reading regular families, some of them, it's like they're testing out a medium for the first time. And even if it's not the topic about education, but I like to, after a reading, I like to just kind of sit with a client and express and talk and mingle and just have that connection. And a lot of parents will say, I do not like what's going on in our public school system. It seems corrupt. It's corrupt. It's almost like there are leaders out there trying to change history and change it into a way and morphing it. And so that itself kind of puts us into this place of like, well, wait a minute. If they're trying to change history for what actually did really go on, then how do we trust the government? How do we trust the education system? And that question alone puts a question on everything, as far as like, how do we trust our money system? How do we trust religion?
Pharmaceutical.
The medical field, and our food. So I think, there's a mass awakening happening. And I've been reading tons of people that tell me I would never go to a medium because my religion told me that this is very dark. This would be the devil. And they're like, but I don't vibe anymore with my religion. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Totally.
And so they're searching out, they're in that spiritual awakening, and they're trying to figure out what it is that they believe in. So usually when I tell people, well, we're taught as a human to judge, and all of us judges, I judge too. I catch myself and look at it and go, wait a minute, I need to kind of look at this real quick.
Yeah.
So we all do it. But we're kind of taught to judge, and we're also taught that heaven in religion, there's going to be judgment. But what I love about loved ones when I channel them through is they often tell people, why is it that we portray heaven to be very similar to human nature when we kind of say that there's peace?
Yeah.
Because judgment does not have peace at all. So then a client could awaken and go, oh my goodness, like that's right. Like, we are accepted for who we are. We just need to love ourselves. So this spiritual awakening is honestly everything from history to medical field to government to religion.
Yep.
Everything is coming up to the surface and we're questioning everything.
Totally.
And I think to the public, it's terrifying. It's scary because it kind of puts us into a place of feeling
It's
lost.
uncomfortable.
Like,
yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable and very vulnerable.
Totally. And that's what we're going through, I think, collectively right now. And when I'm listening to you, I always have to, because I say these things too on the show, and I always want to feel like it's a positive show, and I'm coming at it from love, and I know you are too. When we talk about things like the medical system or pharmaceutical or teachers and homeschooling, we're not trying to be negative, and there are wonderful teachers out there. There are wonderful things taught in school. I went to public school. However, it's very different now than it was when we went to school. Let's be honest. It's different. But I have friends that are teachers. Like, this is all coming from a place of respect. There are doctors that save lives every day. Like, this is not poo-pooing every system and everything. There's still a lot of good things happening in the world. Like, don't get us wrong. There are a lot of things that aren't working. And over time, as we were speaking about evolvement, things change inevitably, and they have to change. And things that have been going on aren't working anymore. And so that doesn't, again, it doesn't mean everything is bad and everyone in those fields is bad. It's just this is why you see large shifts of people pulling their kids out of school or looking at an alternative. For instance, we're thinking for our kids, they're young still, but like, it's not that like school is so bad. It's we want a school where they're not sitting in a bright lit room and a desk where they can't talk all day, more of a creative atmosphere, more nature based, especially when they're really young. What are they led to, right? And then, yes, they're still going to learn their alphabet. We teach that at home anyways, but they're going to learn all the things they have to learn to function in the society. It's not like I used to think homeschooling was super weird because I always went to public school, right? But things are shifting, right? And so that's not bad. It's actually really good.
It's amazing.
All these changes are really good. So although you said, it's very uncomfortable because there's a lot of conflict and people are like, no, this is working. And other people say, no, this isn't working. It's actually really, really good.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to like grow and learn and try new things. And it's just, there's a lot happening at once. It can get really overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming. And I love the fact that you were trying to tell the audience too, like, we're not being negative. Like if we look at the medical field, I like what you said. There are amazing doctors out there. Sure. You have friends that are educators. I have clients that are educators that are amazing people. And so I always kind of look at it as like in every career, or every organization in the world, you will always see the good and the bad. Yep. And that's why I kind of wanted to mention earlier too, like not all religion is bad. Like there is some amazing religions out there that, do teach unconditional love and non-judgment. But I would say for the majority of it though, that we're learning as humans, like what you said, that there are some things in every part of our life that just isn't working anymore. And we kind of need to revisit all of these things and start to ask ourselves, well, what would be working? Going into the education, I love the fact that you were talking about like gardening. Spirit even says that too. They say, well, education in the far future is going to change dramatically. However, we do all need to learn how to spell and write and
Sure.
read and do math. Like those are
Yeah.
essential, and
Earthly
and
things.
in history in certain
Yeah.
ways. Yeah, and just as long as it's truthful history. Um, so all of those things will still be there. However, what if, and Spirit tells people in the far future, the goal that Spirit has for our evolution of like, what if you had a child, kind of very similar to a Montessori school, where
Hmm.
it's like, what do you want to learn?
Right.
You
Like, what are
know,
you
and
drawn to? Hmm.
yeah, totally. That kind of wanted me. I thought of a story that I kind of wanted to tell you in the audience about how I'm amazed by this new generation that I'm
Hmm.
seeing.
Yeah.
It was probably about maybe a year ago from now, and a mom came in with her 5-year-old son, and I've already read the mom once before. And so I asked her, I was like, are we going to just focus on you or are we going to focus on him? And she goes, I want you to just focus on him today. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And no matter what age a child's at, just as long as they're with a parent, like I always require that if they're a minor, they need to have a parent, in the room.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how old they are. I trust that Spirit is going to always bring up whatever that child needs to hear.
Yeah.
So I was connecting to this child's higher self. And his higher self says, my main primary purpose in life is to work with Elon Musk
Oh,
in
wow.
the space program and to explore the universe, to
Hmm.
explore space. And my eyes are closed because I'm channeling. And he starts crying. And I hear him,
Aw.
and his mom hears him say, my whole life makes sense. Thank you.
Aw.
And this kid is 5, and
Wow.
it blew me away. And so I asked his mom, after he had said that, I asked his mom, I was like, have you seen your son get involved with, like, space or Elon Musk? And she goes, I don't know where it comes from, but he's obsessed with Elon Musk.
That's so crazy. And he's
you know,
5.
and so, yeah, right. When I was 5, I can't really remember when I was 5, other than I loved, I had like these little building blocks that I would like build structures with, and
Hmm.
I had an obsession with Polly Pockets,
Oh, I love Polly
and
Pockets.
I
Yeah.
had a sister, and so she would play
Yeah.
with Barbies, I would play with Barbies, and I love stuffed animals. So when I was 5, I was not thinking about what I'm going to be doing for my
Right.
life. Like that never even came to
Well,
my
he's probably an old
mind.
soul.
Very old soul,
Yes.
yeah. And
Aw.
so I bring this story up because as we were on the topic of evolution, these kids
Yes.
are
Coming
amazing.
in. Hmm.
Yeah, they're the ones that are gonna see the corruption in any in part of any system that's
Yeah.
been created, and they're
And
gonna
they're going to
kind
be
of
our
learn.
teachers, right? I mean, I feel like we're going to learn
Right.
so much from them. And I've heard this from many different sources that these children coming in now are very evolved spiritually, and they're coming in at
Yes.
this crazy time to help kind of lead us. And I mean, that may be true for many generations. Like, the younger ones coming in they've been here before and they're wise and but I feel that with my
Exactly.
kids too. Like, I don't really
Oh my
know,
goodness.
but I just have this feeling that they're very like spiritually evolved and,
Oh, very evolved.
loving and just, they're going to be the ones that are going to experience a lot of these things that we're kind of working to change the schools and things. It'd be really cool. We're learning so much from them. They're going to obviously learn from
Oh,
us, but yeah,
totally.
it's
Absolutely.
an exciting time actually, even though
It's a
it's
very exciting
crazy,
time.
it's a cool time. And that's why I love talking to people like you and just, I mean, gosh, we could talk all day. It's like, I keep on wanting to
No.
like respond to what you're going to say, but then you say something else cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just so much. And that's what I love about this podcast all over the place. But there's just
Right.
so much. And I think, maybe the kind of the theme of our talk today is just, it's an exciting time to be around in the world. There's so much
Exactly.
evolving. And then I think what I'm kind of getting from our conversation is, whether you have bad spirits coming in, good spirits coming in, you're starting to awaken, or you're curious, or you have children, or you're in school, do what feels good to you. And I think that might be
Follow
something
your
that
heart.
I'm offering, but I think you probably agree because I know you well, but like,
Absolutely.
do what feels right for you and resonates inside of you, because we're in a world where
Exactly.
everyone's telling you what to think, marketing to you, what to buy, what to eat,
Yep.
what to do. This is the diet. This is the diet. Keto, vegan. It's like you literally were at everything is at your fingertips with technology, and there's just so
Yep.
much. I was listening to a podcast. I don't know if you've heard of Paul Check. I'm actually recording with a girl
Oh, how cool.
tomorrow her name's Mimi Lindquist, but she has the medicine podcast, which is really cool. I've been listening to a lot, and she had Paul Check on, and he was saying, we literally right now today in one day, we come across more information and learn more and see more than some
Oh my
people
goodness.
ever will, like maybe in a tribe or our ancestors ever knew in their lifetime.
It's so true.
I mean,
It's
that's
so
what's
true.
so, and I think that's what's so crazy. And if you can, like, you have to manage that, of course, because it can be too much.
Absolutely.
But, you know, for our conversation here, it's like, you know what's so cool about this time? We do have the technology to spread these words, to spread these
Yes.
ideas, to talk about these things, which is, I think, speeding up the awakening. Because I may not
Absolutely.
have like learned about the Great Awakening back, but I found it on Instagram. See, so it's like,
Yeah.
and then you and we can do these Zoom talks. It's like, this is
Exactly.
so cool if you use these tools in the right way.
Yes. Absolutely.
You know, Elon Musk, hate him, love him, whatever. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter. Yeah.
He's stirring the pot. He's using Twitter. He's
Yeah.
making people think. Again, if you don't like him or you like him, but it's making you think, what is true to me? What do I think? He's got some interesting points. He can also be kind of crazy, you know? So I just think it's a cool time. You have to, what is resonating inside of you that feels right for your best
Exactly.
intent? And if it doesn't feel
Exactly.
right, you don't honor that and you don't have to go with it. And it takes
Absolutely.
practice, right? But
Absolutely.
so I don't know. I just thinking
I,
about that when you're talking about how we have the ability to
I
ward
love
off bad
everything that you
spirits,
said.
bring good
Absolutely.
ones in.
Yep.
And, you know, it's kind of fascinating to talk about all that stuff. You know, like I was going to start asking you about like, okay, the negative spirits. And I'm like, I don't want to focus too much on that, but at the same time, it's like interesting. And I don't know. I just think
Right.
it's fascinating.
If we can kind of like pull everything together as far as like negative spirits and what we're talking about, you know, whether if it's, you know, negative spirits or us humans that are experience negative feelings, emotions, or thoughts, it's all kind of the same thing. It's a lower vibration that
Yes.
does bring people down. And I think through this awakening, people are struggling more than ever, where it's like, you know, I'm sure that the audience or I've also experienced this too, where because we are in a world where we are now starting to learn that we have to navigate our own belief system, that we don't know where to go to. You know, I'm not going to bring in my political views by any means, but if I were to talk about the politics, some people are like Democrat, Republican.
Mm-hmm.
They struggle with that, right? And I have more than ever relationships, partners that come in. I'm not a counselor, but sometimes people will use
It is
mediums or
like a
psychics
therapy
as
in a way.
it is a
Yeah.
therapy. It really is.
Well, especially if you're
I
working
have,
on stuff with like trauma and fear, it's like, I mean, my
it's
dad's a therapist.
yeah,
I love therapy, but I feel like I've had
it's
more success in working with mediums.
oh,
Yeah.
definitely. You know, and you know, even though I tell people I'm not a life coach, I haven't been certified in that or psychology or therapy. I always have to put out there, you know, that I'm not. But people will say, well, you know, what you do is you channel information from heaven that is useful for us humans to apply.
Hmm.
So in a way, it is extremely therapeutic. But I'll have couples come in and they will express to me, we have two different political views, and now we're starting to fight.
Mm.
And we're thinking about separating. And what I love about the highest of self is that they will say, love is not about two people thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But love is actually about what you admire about that person
Mm.
through their soul. You know,
Hmm.
what about their characteristic traits and personality traits that you love about them?
That's
Uh,
really
what
good.
what do they do for you that expresses the love that they have for you?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to notice that there's a division a big division happening. And in a sense, we can kind of say the world has already been kind of divided. So this is not anything
Yeah.
new. However, I'm starting to see it more than ever. And if I were to kind of incorporate negative spirits to negative energy, it's all the same thing.
Yep.
And if we are, it's okay to have your own truth. However, sometimes we can't be the ones to try to control someone's mind and thinking
Yeah.
the same way that we
Yep.
think. It's impossible.
Oh, it's
And
impossible.
it's impossible, yeah. So in order for us humans to evolve, we need to accept people's differences.
Yes.
And it kind of comes into a conclusion of everyone is on their path.
Yep.
You know, I have couples coming in that, like, say for an example, a wife is going through a spiritual awakening and she's wanting to try to get her husband to
Yep.
believe in mediums and energy work. And so what we tell that client through the highest of self and say, hey, we know that your intentions are pure. Like, this is a cool, fun world that you've
Sure.
tapped into, and it's exciting, and you want to share it with the person that you love.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have to connect to that person's husband's higher self. And I
Yes.
ask that husband's higher self, is it meant for you in this lifetime to awaken?
Mm.
And sometimes I'll hear yes, sometimes I'll hear no.
Mm.
And so if I hear a no, then we try to help that person go, try not to put or force your belief system
Yes.
onto
Like
this
it's not their
person.
time right now.
It's not their time.
Yeah.
And a spiritual awakening is a thought process that happens in the brain when we have epiphanies and ideas that come to us. So there is so much out there that is all true,
Yep.
that we discredit, like, this political party's not right, or whatnot, right? However, if we kind of come to a conclusion, it would be there's parts of truth in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of just need to all come together with love, compassion,
Yeah.
and understanding, and realizing, like, hey, just because you don't think the same way
Yep.
I think, I still love you because of,
Yes.
these reasons.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like whether if it's a negative spirit, or our own negativity that we create through our own emotions and our thought, there's going to be energy trying to bring us down,
Yeah.
but we are in full control of what brings us down by how we react to it. And
It's
if we
true.
react in a very calm, collected, understanding, compassionate way, then we're actually already learning what spirit
Mm-hmm.
wants us to learn.
Very
You know,
nicely said. Yes, I
I love
agree
it.
with you. And I was thinking that too, kind of just like the summary of our talk, like
I
whether
love it.
it's a
I know.
spirit or political, there's a lot of control and fear-based thinking and energy. And it doesn't matter if it's here with people or in spirit, it
Exactly.
exists, right? But you have the
Right.
choice if you want to feed into that, what you want to project. And I also really agree with that. When I first started my spiritual journey, I read that, Eckhart Tolle books. And he's
Well, I love Eckhart
in the
Tolle.
very
Yes.
beginning, he
Oh my
said,
goodness.
and it's good for a kind of it's not just beginner. Like I could keep reading it and learn from it now, right?
Right.
Where I'm humble. Like I'm not saying I'm some guru. Give me a break.
No,
But you know
yeah.
what I'm saying is like, it's a nice entry. If someone hasn't read any of the Eckhart Tolle books, New Earth, Power of Now, I think personally, because I read it in the beginning of mine, like it's a very easy way to he makes it really easy to understand some of these, manifestation and power of your thought and New
Oh
Earth and all
my
this
goodness.
stuff. He was talking about this before this was like a cool trend, right? Like the Great
Right.
Awakening or whatever. But
Absolutely.
I think the first thing he said is, if this isn't resonating with you, it's not your time, set the book down. And I thought that's so cool. So yeah, if people aren't resonating with what you're thinking, it doesn't have to just be spiritual. Don't push
Exactly.
them. It's not for them at that time, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that you're better or they're better. It's just, I think that really helped people kind of like, okay, let's just table this. It's not, happening for you right now or for me. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Analogies that higher selves like to tell people to kind of help things click. I think epiphanies are very powerful. So higher selves try to not force, but help, us humans to have an epiphany. So one of the analogies that oftentimes comes in is that when we are a parent, and we're teaching our children how to walk, they're going to fall.
Yes.
We do not get mad at them when they fall because we know that they're learning.
Yes.
And so if we look at every part of our journey and every part of our life as a learning experience, that child does not know how to balance on their 2 feet just as yet.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if we kind of look at it as that analogy, we can't get mad at someone for not understanding what we're trying to tell them
Totally.
because the equipment is not there.
Yeah.
They're not there yet.
Yeah.
And
some of us are
it's kind of,
crawling. Some
yeah,
of us
they're
are
crawling,
walking. Some of us are running. We're like, let's do this. Like I'm trying to wake up, and then we kind of fall sometimes still.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people are like flying, you know?
Yeah. And you
know?
hear that from a lot of people too. Like a lot of spiritual teachers and people, and I think this too, like the earth is a school. We're here to learn. And man, we're like little kindergartners because there's so much to learn. We have no idea, right? And so we're just kind of like,
oh, absolutely.
This is a school and we're trying to figure it out. And it's such a blessing to be here. And
totally.
Anywho, it's just crazy. But I was going to say something really quick too. When my husband and I met, we're going back to, you said when you have different political, this is a fun real life example. Tends to be more conservative. Well, he was, grew up in the South, military, like he's more conservative, more libertarian, really. I grew up like Democrat, really liberal, and I've changed a lot. I actually literally call myself like politically homeless because I'm in the middle, and I'm like, there's like flaws on, I think all the government's like BS.
I'm exactly where you're at.
Yeah. I see both sides, but I'm just like a moderate person. Like I just want everyone to be happy and do well. And like, I think that there's like good points on both, but it's gotten so messed up that overall it's all just a mess. And anyways, but the point is we were very different when we came together, and then we ended up having this like great awakening spiritually that we didn't even know existed. Which is like such a blessing. I think that's why we're meant to be together, to help each other grow, and we're kind of in line with this stuff. And we've really tuned out a lot of political stuff, me more than him even. Like I don't watch the news, and because I just think it's all like control and crap. But the point is you can be very different with someone and learn so much. And I think we're all mirrors, right? It's reflecting back to us to learn. So I think just that example of like your clients, and then me and my husband, like you don't have to be the same with someone. What can you learn from somebody? And often you learn the most when they're different than you. So it doesn't mean you have to fight them. It's like, let's learn. It's like,
let's learn, let's expand our knowledge and our information, like my husband and I, we don't claim to be either Democrat or Republican. And there are both parties that we just, we agree to some things and then we don't agree to other things. So we're kind of like, our political beliefs are kind of like, well, if we agree to majority of something, then that's where we're going to be voting more for. So we're pretty open-minded in that sense. But for him, he's he goes on to what is it called, Rumble. He goes on Rumble a lot, and I know of Rumble. I'm not against Rumble by any means, but I just don't really watch too much about political stuff. I'm sensitive, so if I watch something,
it's too much,
I'm gonna absorb the energy. So for that reason, I just choose not to. But he'll share with me different things about what he's learned on these videos. And I will notice myself, it's not that I disagree with him, but I'll start noticing that I feel stressed out.
Like that's exactly me.
I'll fall into fear,
Totally.
And then he's an honest person, and so he'll say, why you feel like you're in fear, why are you in fear? And I'll tell him, and I'm like, well, I think me as being a sensitive, I get so sensitive of what's happening in the world because I want more world peace.
Totally. I'm right with you.
And yeah, totally. And then he says the same thing, but he tells me, he goes, well, even though I'm sensitive, because he lets me know he can get worked up, on some of these things. He goes, so even though I'm sensitive too, and it bothers me, he goes, I would like to get into the loop of things so we can navigate our life in a way. So like if there's a problem with the financial
you need to
system, then he'll need to know.
Right.
So that's when I started kind of shifting the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, well, if ego is just fear-based, if I'm scared of hearing knowledge or information, I can fall into a place of ego.
Yep.
Most likely I can go on defense.
Yep.
Um, because I don't want to hear what I'm hearing, because I don't want to accept it. But then I look at it as the bigger picture and I was like, but what if this is all part of the greater, bigger plan?
Right.
Spirit has it handled. And so if I have faith and trust that the conflicts that I see that I don't agree with,
Mm-hmm.
is going to be resolved. And me just having the knowledge of this information could actually change the way that I react to it,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so nowadays when he shares things with me, haven't perfected it, but I definitely can say I'm a lot more calmer now.
Yeah.
Because I look at it as like, well, what's ever going to happen is probably supposed to happen. And there's a greater divine plan through all of this.
Yeah, that's true. I resonate with that too. It's hard for me to hear stuff and I'm like, don't send me articles and it's just too much, but it's the reality too. And yeah, you just have to navigate it.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. Yes. Well, my gosh, I hate to cut this conversation. I got to go help my husband. It's dinner time with the 2 babies, but we could always talk forever.
We have so much fun every time we talk.
Travis, thank you for being here. And
thank you so much.
I loved
our
conversation, and it's always just all over, but it's great. And this is so good for people, I think, just things to think about. And, maybe you're curious and you've been getting things coming through, or you're interested about it, or even if you're not, just like, we're all in this world together. There's been a lot of conflict, like whatever. I hope something resonated with you and you can, think about it. How can you be more loving to yourself and more loving to people, and just listening to your intuition, your gut. I think,
exactly.
There's
Follow
a lot of
your heart.
Yes. There's a lot of good stuff that we chatted about. But I want people to, know where they can find you too, if they're curious,
yes.
If they want to have a reading with you, or, whatever, just to, learn more about this kind of stuff. So will you tell people where they can find you online?
Absolutely. So the best way is to find me on my website. So my website is psychictravishill.com. If you are curious on wanting to schedule an appointment, whether if you have lost a loved one and you're just wanting to make sure that they're okay, or maybe there's deeper levels of grief that, you feel that we need to work through. Or if you're going through a spiritual awakening, you just kind of need to get that feeling of like, I just need something to restore too. My faith, my belief system. And then of course, if you need guidance from your higher self about like your life path, your purpose, your relationship, work, or career, no matter what it is, on my website, there's an online self-scheduling system. And I do readings not only in person, but remote. I prefer to do Skype and phone. So those are the options on remote. And then, of course, those that are here locally in Salt Lake, of course, I have an office in South Jordan that I meet people at.
Very cool. And I can vouch, like I said, I've had readings with Travis, and I've had people that had some trauma and they came through like in heaven. Like, I mean, it's real. It's not a joke. So it sounds crazy to people, but I'm telling you, it's legit. And it's very comforting to know that there are, there's more than just this earth, and it's a good place. There's a good place waiting for you if you choose to want to go to a good place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I agree. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Travis.
Thank you so much. Well, you have such a beautiful night with your babies,
thank
you.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll put Travis's information in the description box below, and happy growing and spiritual awakening, and wherever you are, you're in the right place and you are wonderful. And I'm just so glad that you're here listening. Cheers.